And one. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. As always, we have either a question or a word. Today we have a word, and this word is one that is being thrown around a ton in today's world, in today's society, and it means different things to different people. And so the word is diversity. So when you hear that word, the listener, what do you think of? And so I found somebody that's going to give us a unique angle on this. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Katherine McCord. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so very much for having me.
Absolutely. So you're a founder, which is awesome. I love hanging out with founders, and your company is Titan Management. So fill us in on what
Correct.
Titan Management is.
So it is a universal design-based people operations consulting firm. And universal design simply means that you're designing for flexibility, sustainability, and so that it works for everybody. So it's kind of a broad form of design and a way to take care of people and a way to make sure that your business stays in business and is successful, especially from a people operations standpoint.
So when you talk about diversity, then you're
Yeah.
looking at it from a different angle because there's a ton of ways that you can look at it. I have a way that I want to work through with you later.
Yeah.
But when you see that word, Katherine, diversity, what kind of pops into your mind first?
Well, I've done a lot of research on the topic. So I'm an avid learner. I perpetually research and go like when other people are scrolling on social media, I'm over there researching like a weirdo. And I have multiple certifications, including like in neuroscience and D&I and all that type of thing. So I've done a lot of work around this space. And diversity, I mean, let's just start with the basic meaning, right? So it just
Yeah.
needs to be varied from, right? So
Okay.
to be diverse from something else is to be different from that thing, right? So
Sure.
when you say diversity, you're saying different from other things. Well, if you really break it down, everyone has diversity from everyone else of some kind, right? Whether it's
Right.
diversity of thought, whether it's diversity of religion, diversity of age, physical, but whatever it is, right? And there's kind of 14 broad, what are known as diversity categories,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So like
Okay.
you have, people think it's just like race and gender and then you're done, right? But that is
Right.
really not that simple. There's 14 very broad categories. And the reason that those get focused on more is that that's where you tend to see marginalized communities or communities that have suffered some kind of bias. So even let's say with veterans, for instance, you'll have people are afraid to hire them because they've seen crazy things about PTSD, right? Or they've seen things that are frightening about PTSD, or they think that there's no transferable skills, right? So even veterans who honestly get a lot of honor and things like that in one way can
Right.
also be marginalized in another, right? So
Sure.
so diversity itself just simply means that you're different from other people and that everybody has their own diversity.
Yeah.
Where it when we start branching into inclusion and understanding is where you start to have groups of humans who have had issues because of their diversity because other people are shutting them out
Yeah.
because of that diversity.
Gotcha. Well, and I mean, so like on my end, it's interesting because we do a ton of work with personality profile disc.
Hmm.
And so when we're talking about creating a team, building a team, expanding a team, we talk about diversity of personality.
Right.
And because you
Yeah.
don't want to have a lot of the same Daves on your team because you guys will have a ton of ideas and nothing will get implemented because I'm not a
Right.
strong implementer, right? So you'd have a man, day one of our, strategic plan meeting, that room is filled with post-it notes on the wall. Every square inch is taken, right? But then
Oh
when
yeah.
it comes down to, all right, you guys, we crushed this. We all look at all these Daves look at each other and go, oh my gosh, who's going to implement this? And we're
Yeah.
like,
Like what are we
I'm
gonna
not
do?
good at that. I'm not good
Like
at
we're
that.
lost.
Right. So now we're stuck, right? So
Yeah.
I think of diversity, again, I think society is trying to put it into these simple forms of, color or gender or, whatever. And it's like you said, I'm glad that you brought that up, that there's 14 different points. So hopefully the listener is trying to expand as we're speaking
Right.
their actual horizon when it comes to that.
Right.
So again, there's really no right or wrongs here. I'm hoping today that for the listeners around the world that they're able to think about their team and their company from the realization, like you said, everybody's different.
Yeah,
So
everybody's
regardless
different. Yeah.
if you had 10 girls on a team or 10 boys on a team, to just make it super simple, you still of all the same race and everything identical, there's still 10 different personalities, there's
Yeah.
10 different backgrounds, there's all these
Although
different
although I would have
dimensions.
questions if your
Yeah,
team was that symmetrical.
sure, right,
I would start to look at you and go, we might have some issues of bias here.
right, exactly.
We
Yeah,
might need to diversify a little bit. But you know
right,
what's
yep,
funny is that's another word that's strongly misunderstood. So people tend to think that bias is all about the isms, right? You know,
yeah,
like racism, sexism, all of these things, but it's not. So you
right,
can have biases against colors, you can have biases against names, you can have biases against all kinds of different things, right?
right,
So,
yep,
for instance, this is a true story. I actually caught myself at one point. I had had several bad experiences in a row with people named Mallory. And so I developed a bias and I started seeing resumes with people named Mallory and I go, ugh. And that was my first response. Now I caught it real quick. So I was like, okay, that's a
sure,
weird response to have to a name, right? And so I caught it, but I thought, how many things, that's one of those things where you start to realize, like, how many things are you dismissing other people over
right,
something silly or something that just reminded you of someone else that stinks, and that's not their fault
right,
that happened, right? And so bias is another word that's really misunderstood. Bias simply means that our brain has made a decision on something and typically with limited information. That's all that is. And it's something that literally every human does. Every
gotcha,
single human does it. But it doesn't make it okay. We still have to work to expand that and fix it. And that's another thing that I
sure.
train people to do is actually how to do that, how to turn those things off and how to fix
Well, for all the Mallorys that are listening, we love you. So,
it. We do. Much love, no hate. It's
yeah,
not your fault that I
yeah,
had a couple of bad
yeah,
ones in a
exactly.
row.
Don't take that on. This is all Catherine's
No,
work. You don't have to worry
stop.
about that. So, but I think the interesting thing, what I really wanted to work with you today on, Catherine, was you come at this diversity piece from something that, quite frankly, I've never heard of prior to prepping and working with you on this, is this neurodiversity. And so, because you talked about in your work, I saw like there's visible and non-visible diversity that's out there. So we're probably really used to the physical, the visible, right?
Right,
Somebody in a wheelchair,
right.
somebody with some type of difference than us, and we immediately probably get nervous about that. So when you see, help the listener today or the viewer on the neurodiversity thing and what that means to
Yeah.
you.
Such it's a term that's like that so many people now are just starting to understand, and that's okay. By the way, this is so the term in and of itself did not come about until the 90s. There was an Australian sociologist, Judy Singer, who came up with the term. It actually has evolved since she originally came up with it. So now it's generally accepted as meaning a medically visible and or diagnosable difference in how the brain processes information and stimuli. Now that's a very broad category. So it's everything from conditions such as cerebral palsy, MS, and epilepsy on the medical side, right? Then you have the learning and communication spectrum. That's going to be autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, etc. Then you have the mental health spectrum. You have OCD, bipolar, anxiety, all of these fun things, right? And so it's a very broad spectrum. It ends up being about a third of the population that falls into this category. And neurodiversity simply means that your brain and neural pathways function differently than the typical
Okay.
folks. So that's all that it means. It doesn't mean that you are inherently disabled. It doesn't mean that you are incapable. It doesn't mean that you're defunct in some way. It just simply means that you function on a different wavelength, right?
Gotcha. Sure.
So, um, and it's very interesting too because there's also been a lot of studies. So historically, there was kind of going back to that concept of marginalized communities. It was thought that if you were different, you were wrong,
Okay.
right? You're defective.
Yep. Yep.
Do not want.
Yep.
Now there is science is catching up to what a lot of us in the community already had figured out. And so you have Johns Hopkins, National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine, PLOS Genetics, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on. Even Hewlett Packard has done studies on this that prove that there is inherent ability that goes along with these disabilities, right? So there are inherent, what we call affectionately in the community, superpowers or strong capabilities. So a few things that are highly typical are 3D model thinking, hyper speed learning and or processing, ability to a strong ability to innovate. This is where you see almost every innovator in the world falls into this category. Okay, Albert Einstein, Alan Turing, um, even creators like Maya Angelou, Simone Biles, even the Olympic athlete. You have, however you feel about him, but Elon Musk is even very
Sure.
divergent. Richard Branson. So all of these people that have moved our world forward
Okay.
fell into this category, right? So
Sure.
so it's not, so there can be disability associated with it, right? But it's not the only side of the coin. So kind of the message behind my work and a lot of other folks in the community is, yes, we want to accommodate, allow people to work in ways that are natural and comfortable so that you get the
Yeah.
benefits of
Yeah.
these other things and so that everybody can still be healthy.
Wow. There's so much there. Thank you for sharing that. So
Yeah.
I wrote some stuff down here. So I kind of want to unpack that with you because
Yeah.
I want to start with the fact that this really is affecting a third of the
Yeah.
population. So
Yeah.
the odd thing is for people listening right now, we use the proverbial 10 people on a team just because I failed
It's
math a
easy.
lot. So super easy. So right now, if there's an entrepreneur listening from around the globe somewhere and they have 10 people on their team, the research would indicate that a three and a third of your team is actually falling into this scenario where there is some
Yeah.
potential neurodiversity. I just want to
Yeah.
clarify that that's what you said.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And just to also be clear, so not even everybody is diagnosed. There are a lot of people that are now getting late in life diagnoses. I meet people consistently that are 50s, 60s, 70s, even one that was in their 80s that are just now getting diagnosed because we didn't have robust criteria
Sure, sure.
before. And so a lot of people are like, "Oh, yeah, now my life makes sense." Right? Like,
Wow, there you
"Oh,
go.
that's
That
why I
was
do
easy.
these things." Right?
One little test and their whole life made sense now. This is
It's
great.
true. Like I've had so many people go, "Oh my God, I feel so much better.
Yeah,
This just makes so much sense. Okay, now everything I have language around it, and diagnosis isn't everything, right? Like it's not going to change who you are,
sure.
but it can give you better language to speak to other people about what's going on with you. It can help you find better tools to work with yourself, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really funny. So about a third, give or take,
Yeah.
of the population fits into this
Wow.
category.
So, hey, if you put that link in the show notes and that's going to change people's worlds, they just click on that and their whole life has meaning. That'd be
they can
awesome. So,
they can just come and just figure out all about it. And by the way, if you're one of those people and you're like, wait a minute, I'm kind of different. Maybe this is something that I need to explore.
right?
Definitely reach out because I can hook you up with some tests, some online tests and stuff that can at least point you in the right direction.
Sure. Well, and that was
Yeah.
going to be my question. Okay, so we've identified that there's some people on my team. I'm just going to use me. I have a
Yeah.
team of 10, let's say.
Right.
And three of those people on my team potentially at minimum, somewhere in that
Yeah.
range could have some neurodiversity.
Right.
Now, as an entrepreneur, my first thing is I think about what's legal and what's not, because I don't
Yeah.
want to like go up to somebody and say, "Hey, have you ever heard of neurodiversity?" Or, this is a really sensitive subject, right?
It
So for
can be. Yeah.
how does somebody listening, I guess let me ask it this way, Catherine, how does somebody listening that might detect this on their team or might detect it for themselves? I don't want to be like, I can't be me. What's the next step in that scenario for somebody listening?
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things. And number one, if you're an entrepreneur, it's likely that you're on you're in the neurodiversity community. Most entrepreneurs are, and that's great. Welcome to the community. So first of all, my first rule, whenever you're talking about anything surrounding EEOC, ADA, people's rights, diversity and inclusion, first of all, number one rule: don't be weird. Okay. If somebody can say to you, I don't know you like that, don't say or ask it. Don't do it. Don't be weird. Like,
Right.
don't make other people uncomfortable.
Right.
Another important thing to understand is that we don't need to know the why in order to take care of our people. Okay, so
Sure.
this that we have this inclination as human beings and to be very nosy, right? We
Yeah.
just want to know things, and that's okay. Like, I'm not shaming and blaming. My natural nature is to be super nosy and inquisitive, so I get it.
Yeah.
Um, but you don't want to do that with it. It doesn't really matter. So, for instance, I had a team member at one point of my last W-2 job. I had a team member that I could tell was dyslexic. I mean, like, you could, it was just obvious. Extremely articulate, uh, terrible written communication. Just, it was a disaster in her case. Not everybody with dyslexia has that level of problem. She did. Um, and people could not understand her emails. They couldn't understand what she was trying to communicate, and it was causing problems. Well, it wasn't my place to diagnose her, right? It wasn't my place to do, and the truth is, it really didn't matter why this
Sure.
was happening.
Okay.
And I could have ultimately been wrong. It could have been a brain injury or anything like that. But um, so what I did was I said, okay, here's a tool. And at the time, the best tool on the market was Grammarly. I don't think that that's necessarily true anymore, but at the time it was Grammarly. So I said, hey, just try. I know you've been having this problem with your emails. No worries. It's okay. Here's a tool. Try this out. Let me know how it goes. A couple of days later, she literally skips into my office, big, huge smile, is going, it's working. Everybody's complimenting my emails. Everything's going so great. Thank you so much. It's great. She
Sure.
became a top performer.
Nice.
I didn't need to know her why.
Yeah.
That was not, it didn't matter. I needed to
Sure.
fix the problem. So it's the what and the how. So
Sure.
that's really the best way to address it. Past that, I mean, look up your ADA and EEOC laws. Basically, again, don't be nosy. If you avoid
Yeah.
being nosy, you won't
Yeah.
violate anything.
Gotcha. Good. Well, no, and it's just I think that it's a touchy subject. We don't want to disrespect people. And I was wondering, I wrote this down, I was going to ask you. I mean, if again to the proverbial 10 people on a team, if I think that there might be a couple of questionable people that might have, one of these neurodiversities, am I better off like testing the whole team to kind of not point out or not single somebody out? I would just, I don't know how I would feel, Catherine, if I was busy doing my job I was one of the 10, and all of a sudden the leader came up to me and said, hey, Dave, can I talk to you? And then without, however, that discussion, I would feel
Yeah,
like somewhat singled out. I don't know how I
don't
would.
bring it up. Don't bring it up. Like, here's the thing. This is what I tell you. It doesn't matter. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, none of that matters. You don't need to bring it up. You don't need to test anybody. You don't need to know anything. If somebody wants to disclose to you, that's great.
Okay.
It make it about making sure your team has what they need to succeed. So, and a common way that these kinds of things are caught is exactly what I was describing. You catch a performance issue, right? But it's something that could easily be remedied, right? It's just, you just have to have a different tool or use a different method or
Sure.
something like that. So the concept is, it's not about testing. You don't need to know their diagnosis. You don't need to talk about their disability, their diversity, anything like that. That's completely and totally irrelevant. We just need to make sure that they're successful in the workplace. So coming to them and going, hey, this is a problem that I'm noticing, or this is a hiccup I'm noticing. Here's some suggestions I have. Do you have any suggestions? Let's fix it together. And that's it. That's
Gotcha.
it. Another thing to do, and this is how I teach my clients, is design universally. So make it so that everybody can just have what they need anyway. Not everybody's going to work well with the same tools. Not everybody's going to learn the same. Not everybody's going to communicate the same. Not everybody is going to have the same workflow in their day. Even just, and this isn't about just about disability or diversity. This is just how human beings are. Everyone
Sure.
is different, right? You know that.
Yep.
And in your line of work. So just support everybody in working in ways that are natural to them. So the Department of Labor shows that 54% of accommodations are free. So there's no reason not to be accommodating people, right? So
Sure.
just let people, and when Hewlett Packard created a program where they just let people work in whatever way was natural to them, the style, the equipment, everything. Production went up 33%, innovation went up, team wellness went up, retention went up, ultimately client satisfaction and profits went up, right?
Sure. Yep.
So it works. So just let people, when somebody comes into your organization, say, hey, how do you like to communicate? What's your workflow like? Cool. What equipment would you like to make you more comfortable? Go with it.
Gotcha.
Just
Okay.
roll with it. It works.
Well, we're going to take a quick break because when we come back, I'd really like to understand a little bit more about those accommodations because I
Yeah,
feel like that could be a really powerful spot for us to work from. Because again, I think about blind spots. I mean, if I have these 10 people on my team and I don't know any of this, I'm
yeah,
just gonna think, oh, well, Mary's just quirky or John's
yeah.
just weird, right? I mean, these are things that obviously we don't admit in public, but I'm guessing they're in our
Right.
brains. So we'll take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm honored to be hanging out with Katherine McCord, founder of Titan Management, and we are unpacking a neurodiversity topic. I have to say, I never in my life did I think I'd ever use the word neuro anything. And now all of a sudden I'm like, man, I'm feeling like I know what I'm talking about. So this is awesome. Thanks for making it super simple for sixth grade
Sure.
guys like me. So before the break, Katherine, you talked about like half of the accommodations are free. So when you talk about accommodations, kind of unpack that because I'm guessing there's some people listening that we've piqued their interest and they are wondering about their team and they're trying to figure out like what do I do? What's next? I don't necessarily want to point it out to people, but I want to improve their experience at work, their
Right.
engagement. So what are
Right.
some of the accommodations that you've seen work?
So, first of all, accommodations can be literally anything. Okay. Like, I mean, it can be something so simple that it's not even a blip on your radar.
Okay.
Okay. So, for instance, one of the things that I do to accommodate myself because I have 8 disabilities, by the way, uh, and I have a one of those mouse pads that has like the pad on it, right, for my wrist, you
Okay.
know, and that's an accommodation to make my wrist more comfortable, right? An
Okay.
ergonomic mouse can be using a PDF reader because for whatever if there's various reasons you may need one, but to make it more simple to review PDFs, um, using I'm trying to think. Oh, behaviorally, things like no contact. Not everybody wants to be touched.
Yeah.
And during COVID, we all kind of like got to accept this, right? Like,
Right.
by the way,
Yeah.
there were so many people in the disability and neurodivergent communities going, "Yay, we're not getting
Right.
touched anymore!" Like there were so many people that were excited about that. Um, and so, being okay with the fact that people don't want to be touched,
Yeah.
that's an accommodation. And
Sure.
why do we need to touch each other? That's so
Yeah.
weird. Like you just don't need to do that. As an HR person, I'm like, yeah, don't touch each other. That makes my life easier.
Right.
But
Well,
just
oddly enough,
literally anything.
yeah, oddly enough, there are some in DISC, there are some personalities that it says on their assessment that they do better when you don't get within 3 feet of them.
Mhm.
So there
Yep.
are personalities that like that. But so like how did you figure these out? Because you don't know what you don't know. And if it hurts to do this or I'm struggling doing that, I might just think that that's just the way that it is. So
Right.
where did you is that where type management comes in and tries to accommodate and help those entrepreneurs at that spot?
Part of it, yeah, that's part of the work we do. And a lot of times the sad truth is that people have not been taught to take care of themselves. And this is across the board. Okay. This
Right.
isn't
Yep.
just in the disability community, although it's worse in the disability and neurodivergent communities. They've been taught to act like everything's normal, to try to fit in, to try to be conducive, even when that's not natural and comfortable for them. So, first of all, having a list of standard accommodation, which I provide. In fact, it's even on my charity website. It's just up there for anybody to grab, which is jointheneuroverse.org for anybody interested in going and grabbing that. There's a whole list of standard, and then you just have a fill in the blank. And it kind of gives people a starting point, right, to kind
Okay.
of think and work. But also, just as people are working, if they notice or you notice that they're uncomfortable or something's not going right, just see what you can do to fix it, just to settle them down. Because when people are comfortable, they work more effectively, right? It just moves us up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Sure. Yep.
And so it's really just that simple, and asking questions. And so again, when somebody comes into your team, or even if somebody's been there for a while and you want to start this, kind of have like a almost like a survey that you send out that goes,
Mm,
okay, tell me, how would you like to be communicated with?
okay.
How
Sure.
do you want to flow? And what what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable physically and otherwise in the workplace. What can we adjust? What can you do? And just see what people say. And it's going to take a while for people to get really honest about this
Yeah.
stuff because they're gonna be like, yeah, right. You're secretly trying to discriminate against
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
Like,
Yep. You just
because
want
it's
to know my
happened.
kryptonite. You just want to
Yeah,
know my
yeah.
kryptonite to
And
use
so
it
you have
against
to
me.
you have to build that trust. And again, having that standard list will help because that shows I've already put in I'm trying. This is my effort. And when
Right.
people see that effort, they go, oh, okay, so you actually do care, right?
Right.
Like, and they kind of open up. But as leaders, it's just a matter of having those conversations, working with people. If you see something that looks uncomfortable, like because you know how sometimes you look at a person, you're like, that they just look uncomfortable. That just
Right.
doesn't seem
Yeah.
like it's working. Go with that and talk to them. And then again, be flexible. Things like I see so many companies just insisting on having camera on meetings, and I'm like, why? Why? You don't need to have a camera on. I always laugh and I tell my clients, I'm like, oh, so you could not have functioned before Zoom. Oh yeah, no, we could. We had phones. Aha. So you don't
Yeah.
actually need people to
Right.
be on
Right.
camera for that. And so and don't make things secondary because that tells people you're less than if you do this.
Sure.
Just make it this is the thing and you can just do whatever makes you comfortable because it's about the mission. And that's how I teach my clients is every thing that you do in business, it's not just the mission of the company, right? It's every single thing you do in business has a purpose. So if you're having a meeting, the meeting is typically about something, right? At least I hope so. If you're just having
Yeah.
meetings to have meetings, please stop.
Yep.
That's a
Right.
whole other
Yeah.
podcast. Please stop.
Exactly.
Um,
Please stop.
but please stop
Please.
doing that. Just send
Yeah.
an email or say
Yeah.
hi. I don't know what to tell you. But everything has a purpose, right? So as long as that purpose is being accomplished, the rest of it can be completely flexible. How we get there does not matter. It's
Sure.
how, as long as there's integrity involved, laws are followed, obviously, but um, it's about the mission. So as long as the thing that we need to learn is being learned, as long as the widgets are being made, as long
Yeah.
as whatever the thing is, that's what matters. So being completely flexible and just laid back about the rest of it because who cares?
Right.
Right?
Well, is that like kind of then that brings up like a word in my mind? I think of like onboarding. Is that as
Yes.
part of that onboarding process? Should we then incorporate this type of discussion
Yeah.
into that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Just tell me what's comfortable. Tell me, tell us, your communication style. And I'm not big on personality assessments in hiring, but I love the ones that tell you like communication, goals, vision, like
Yep.
those kind of
Yep.
things. Not
Yep.
the like, if you saw somebody steal $5, what would you do? That
Right.
I've never
Yeah.
understood that. But
Right.
like
Yeah.
but when you're onboarding, so add to that. So learn their mission, learn their goals, right? And have them tell you what are your career goals? Like what are the things you want to do? What can we help you learn?
Sure.
Those kinds of things. Ask them how they best learn. Because if you are trying to teach somebody by talking to them and they're a visual learner, they're not going to
Right.
learn and you're going to think that
Yeah.
they're failing, but it's just that your training is not
Yeah.
effective.
Yep.
So ask them how they need to learn and teach them accordingly. Ask them, communication preferences, things like that. And then and then just tell them like, what can we do to make you comfortable while you're working? And throw out that list of here's some things that we have standard, but you can also fill in the blank and tell us something else you need. And
Right.
don't make it a huge process. Just make it as simple as click and you get it.
Yeah.
Unless it's something over a certain dollar amount. And for every company, that dollar amount is different. Like some of
Sure.
my enterprise folks, it's like $1,000 or something like that. For some of my little companies, it's if it's over 50. So it depends,
Yep.
on
Sure.
your size
Yep.
but give people the autonomy to just work the way that they need to.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think the this that we use, there is a 2 pages. One page is a list of ways to communicate with this individual, and then a list of ways not to communicate. Because
Yes.
my
Yeah.
experience has been, Catherine, that if I said, "Hey," just out of the blue in an interview or on onboarding day, I said, "Catherine, what's the best way for me to communicate with you?" I mean, it's kind of, we don't usually think in those terms, right? So it
Right.
at least gives people kind of a checklist to like, wow, I really like that. I really like that.
Yes.
Because,
That kind of tool could be very helpful. Yeah. Now you can just ask if you don't have that kind of tool,
yeah,
but that
absolutely.
kind of
Yep.
tool is very helpful if it is available 100%.
And
Yes.
I just get a lot of deer in the headlight looks because it's like, how do I want to be communicated with? I don't, what are you saying? I want English. I want complete sentences. You know, they're
See,
like, what?
I can answer that. I tell people like I have a list. I'm like, look, here's all the things.
Sure.
That's another thing. Like for individuals and leaders, this is something that you can communicate to your team is okay to do. One thing that I teach when I'm speaking to individuals is stop asking for your needs. Just state them. This is my need, period.
Yeah.
This is, and you can say, and now preferences are a different thing, right?
Right.
Preferences are a question, preferences are a negotiation, but needs should not ever be negotiated. A need should just be, this is it. This is the
Right.
thing, right? And
Yep.
so giving your team the autonomy and the comfort and doing it yourself. As leaders, if we look at our team and say, that doesn't work for me, I need this, that will empower them to do the same thing back. And even in your personal life, I do this with my friends. I tell them
Yeah.
all the time. Like, so for instance, one of my neurodiversities is that I have bipolar disorder. So I have long periods of like baseline and then I have long downs and long ups. And I have one friend who's ADHD. And uh, when I'm in a depressive cycle or baseline, like I love her, what I call her Candyland story style. Like she's like weavy, windy, it's all rainbow and colorful. And I love it. I love how she tells me stories and talks about things. When
Sure.
I'm manic, when I'm at the peak of a manic cycle, I
Yeah.
cannot follow that. And so I tell her, I have a little signal I do where I put my hands like a pyramid shape and I just like do it. And the signal is make a point. And she
Sure.
knows because I told her previously, we had a conversation. I said, I love this about you. It's so cool. It's one of the most endearing attributes that you have. But
Yeah.
for me, when my chemicals are this way, I literally cannot follow that. So I'm going to need
Sure.
your help with that. So we came up with a signal to communicate that. That was a need I have. And so we communicated, and she's not offended. I just tell her what I need, and she does the same thing for me. She'll look at me and say, the way you said that doesn't work for me. Can you rephrase that, please? And it can
Gotcha.
be that she literally didn't understand it. It
Sure.
can be, and think about in the workplace how many situations that would fix, how many times you could avoid going to HR by just saying, stopping and going, okay, that's not working for me. I need this rephrased or I need this redone. And
Yeah.
instead of responding with ego, we just go, okay, cool, let's
Right.
work on it.
Right. Well, and I think the delivery of the message too is important because if you say, "Hey, loser," restate what you said,
Well,
you don't
don't
make any
insult
sense,
people.
right? But I mean, that's the thing is that's in my inside. I'm like, don't say it, don't say it. Just say, "Hey, could you restate?" I love that. That's so
Yeah, just
powerful.
can you do this? And you can
Yeah.
and just say, and I tell people all the time, just say it's not working for me because that's the truth. It's not that what they said was wrong or dumb or it's not working for you,
Yeah.
and that's just the truth. And
Yeah.
it's so funny because I have people go, well, I'm a clear communicator. If they can't understand me, there's just something wrong. I'm like, no, 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 no. No, no, no. There's so many
Right.
different ways to receive things, communicate things. Everybody's brain works differently. Everybody's experiences mold how they think and process. So I said, you are being clear, but that clarity doesn't register for them.
Sure.
So we just need to change, and that's again where I start to teach breaking that biological primitive brain ego defense mechanism that everyone has. It's no
Yeah.
shame, but
Yeah.
we've got to master it. And then responding in curiosity because
Right.
it fixes every problem.
Well, and I think there's this wall that's up. I mean, full disclosure for me today, I was like, kind of like, how is this going to go? Because I read that you had eight, whatever you call them, and diversities at your end,
Yeah,
or some visible,
yeah,
some non. And I have to say, I'm just gonna, I'm a vulnerable person. I'm like, how am I going to deal with this? Because I don't know. It's the unknown.
yeah,
And then again, I felt way better once I started listening to your podcast. I'm like, because people have this
yeah,
thought in their mind of whatever, any of those
yeah,
isms, or any of those four letters,
mm,
or you just have this thought in your mind that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if, and you
yeah,
don't even know what that
yeah.
is. Is
And
that
and
is that
it's
how does that work for you? I mean, is that what
that's
Titan does for
normal.
people? Help
First
them
of all,
in
that's
that?
completely normal. Let's
Okay,
address that. It's
thank you.
okay to be afraid, to not understand. I still, with the work that I do, I will come across diagnoses and conditions that I do not know, I don't understand. So I do a little bit of research and then I ask the person, like, hey, is it okay if I ask you a few questions? Because I need to quiet my mind so I can focus on whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing with them, right? I need to know maybe their safety protocol, that type of
Yeah.
thing. So I have a seizure disorder. I don't know if you saw
I
anything
didn't
about
know.
that one.
Yep. No, no.
Yeah, and so if I'm having a seizure day, there I have to share my safety protocol with people, right? So
Wow.
and so it is about um and I want to give a lot of grace to employers on this one because
Yeah.
you can't ask, right? You can't, but
Yeah.
because you could fall into discrimination, right?
Right.
Um, and but you want to take care of your people, right? And if you don't know, the truth is that you could be left in a scary situation because what if somebody has something and they don't tell you, and then something happens, and
Right.
now you don't know what to do,
Yep.
right? And so I want to give a lot of grace to that. And yes, part of the work I do is teaching both individuals and companies how to come together and work through these situations,
Yep.
how to properly ask these types of questions, how to gain people's trust so that they will disclose to you. Me personally, I started practicing years ago. I started practicing radical disclosure, and I just tell anybody anything that they want to know.
Sure.
And at the beginning of, when I teach a class or work with a client or anything, I tell them, I said, you can ask me literally anything, and I will
Sure.
answer your question, and I will not be offended. And
Yeah.
I have had people ask me really personal questions, and it's okay because I'm putting myself in that position
Sure.
to educate, to teach. I've
Yep.
chosen that. That is my choice. Not everybody is going to choose that. Some
Sure.
people, they don't feel safe. And it's not that you're making them feel unsafe necessarily. It's just that, when you have some of these physical vulnerabilities, you can feel unsafe in certain environments.
Sure.
It may
Yep.
just, it's that animal instinct, right? To protect
Right.
ourselves.
Yep.
So giving grace to people as they're processing through that kind of stuff and how they deal with their own thing is their business. And
Yeah.
that's just the truth of the matter. There's no
Yep.
right or wrong thing. Um, and I want to tell employers it's not always about you. You could be the best boss in the whole world, and that person's just not comfortable sharing because of something else in their life, and
Sure.
it's not you.
Wow.
It's not you, and
That's
it's
powerful.
okay.
Yeah, that's really powerful though, because again, we as business owners, entrepreneurs, we tend to take a lot of that on ourselves. I mean, there's kind of like two camps. There's the people that could care less about their team, with the
Yeah,
thought that meetings will continue until morale improves. You have that group over there,
yeah,
and then the people that are like hyper, like, I care about everything, and I got to know every
yeah,
birthday, and I got to know
yeah,
know, everything that's going on. I'm not
yeah,
saying one's right or wrong. It just I think there's a big diversity just in leadership styles. As we start to land the plane today, Catherine, I want to ask, like, so if somebody's listening, where would they how do you get involved? Where do you jump in? What do you offer? I really want to make sure that we offer
yeah,
that service because, again, I'm guessing there are people listening right now that this is really touching them. And I just want to make sure and make that connection and make sure they
yeah.
have a safe place to land.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. So number one, I do talks. I can just do like a lunch and learn. I come in and actually teach your staff and your team and you how to do these things and work together and communicate more effectively, to avoid HR situations. Like my job, like my goal is to lighten the burden for HR and
Yeah,
employee
right.
relations folks. That's the thing. How to build universal design, all these types of things. So you could reach out to me on kmccordspeaking.com, which is my speaker site. You can go to titanmanagementusa.com. That's my business site. I'm all over LinkedIn and very easy to find because I'm one of like 3 people with my name and with the spelling. So it's super easy to find me. Um, and you can always reach out to me 100%. I also have in October, the 23rd through the 25th, I have a small summit happening in Dallas where we're going to come together and actually as a group, I have some facilitators coming in and all this. We're going to discuss these topics. We're going to work through them together and
Okay.
build solutions for the people that attend. It's very inexpensive to attend and has great food because it's Texas, right? All the
Oh
all the
yeah.
good food is going to be there and
Yeah.
everything. So yeah, if you want to check that out, it's peopleverse.org, and it's going to be
That's
a ton of fun.
That's awesome. I mean, again, I think that this is a unique topic, and I wanted to make sure and expose the listener to it because,
Yeah.
especially when you find out that about a third of the people that you come in contact with would qualify for this. I don't know how to say it
No,
in
that's right.
the right way, right? But they're with considering there's 14 categories of diversity, considering that there's some legal things. I mean, this is not something that you just walk in and say, we're doing this the way it is effective immediately. And I think that's what's powerful about Titan Management is you guys help come alongside. I'm assuming you help the business owner. Do you
Oh yeah.
also help the employee? I don't like that word, the team member that
Yeah.
might be struggling with some of these as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll work with everybody. I work with leaders on how to better communicate, how to and then how to also welcome disclosures, things like that, how to find these problems and work with them. So like if you see somebody struggling, how to deal with that without stepping on toes and breaking ADA laws and all of that kind of fun thing. And
Right.
then I work
Yep.
with individuals too. I'll have individual team members come to me and we'll talk through how to disclose, how to self accommodate, that type of thing as well. So the full spectrum of the team.
And your podcast is called Career Launch Live, is that correct? And
That's
you
correct, and it's going to be coming back soon. We're starting. I think it's season 7 now.
oh
That's
wow.
that's going to be starting soon. Yeah.
So catch up on old episodes. Also, there's a book that you wrote. So there's just a ton of stuff out there. I heard you mentioned that you should be called some busy bitch or crazy bitch. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is like there's a lot going on here. So um
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, last question for you. What would your tip of the day be for somebody listening? Maybe it's something that you covered, maybe it's just something that we haven't shared yet that's on your heart. So what would your tip be for somebody listening?
My literally my number one tip for everybody, because I when I got into this work and I started doing all the neuroscience work, I never realized how this one little change that was so easy, by the way, was going to astronomically change not only my career but my life, and make my life better, my relationships better. And so that is learn to master the biological ego mechanism, which is just that little thing back there that tells your brain it needs to be right. Everybody has it. Literally every single human has this. And it blocks effective communication. And so learn to master that, defeat it, and respond in curiosity, and it will astronomically change your life. And I do
Wow.
give free talks on that, by the way.
That's awesome. And I was going to ask, do you do in-person stuff as well as Zoom, or how do
Oh
you
gosh,
deliver
yes.
your
I
messages?
love to come out and visit my clients 100%. So yeah, I have me out. I will come visit you, teach you. We'll do all the fun activities, and it's a blast, by the way. We have a good time when I come out. This is not like shame and blame and all that kind of, nope. We have a blast. We have a good time. So have me out. I'm always glad to come visit people, no matter where you are in the world.
That's awesome. So cool. So TitanManagementUSA.com is the best spot for people to go. And
Yep.
again, jump on Career Launch Live podcast if you want to catch up on past episodes. When is season 7 starting?
In 2 weeks.
Oh
Actually,
my
the first
gosh.
week of September, whatever that is, however long that is.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Right. Awesome. Well, great. And so, well, thank you so much, Katherine, for jumping on. Thank you for helping me better understand myself as well as the listener what neurodiversity is. And I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. I feel way better about this because of the work that you're doing. So keep working on
Thank
this
you.
and can't wait to keep learning from you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.